Welcome to Hannity, and this is a Fox News alert at this hour. Due process, the presumption of innocence, the rule of law, common sense are on the precipice of a monumental victory. But let us be very clear tonight. This has been an extremely ugly, scary, frankly despicable 22 days. There is hope tonight because today, in what became an extremely powerful and historic speech on the U.S. Senate floor, Susan Collins of Maine announced her support for Judge Brett Kavanaugh, but more importantly, it was her explanation of how she arrived at her decision that was so impressive. Senator Joe Manchin followed her lead, and now Kavanaugh looks poised to be confirmed as the next U.S. Supreme Court justice. Now, coming up tonight, we're going to review how Senator Collins bravely restored sanity and order to the U.S. Senate. Meanwhile, predictably, the left is now in a full meltdown mode, and it is very ugly. They have been exposed. They tried to ruin a man's life for political gain. It turned the confirmation process for the U.S. Supreme Court into a circus and something, frankly, befitting of a banana republic. And now with just 32 days till the all-important midterm elections, it is time as a country that we examine everything that is at stake for this great country of ours. This kind of lawless, shameful behavior, not only should it not be tolerated or accepted by we the people, it has got to stop. And we can never forget how we now have a group of people that have embraced smear, slander, lies, bludgeoning, to literally smashing and slashing all fundamental basic rights that has served us so well. All right, sit tight. The weekend is almost here. Not yet. Kavanaugh's vote is tomorrow, and it is time for tonight's Friday Breaking News Opening Monologue. All right, before I get to all of the breaking news today, and there is a lot, I want to take a minute. I want to say something. I have never witnessed a speech on the U.S. Senate floor that was as powerful as the speech today given by Senator Collins of Maine. Her remarks today. I've been in talk radio now 30 years. Tomorrow, incidentally, I begin my 23rd year here at the Fox News Channel. It was, frankly, the best speech I ever witnessed in the U.S. Senate. It was an example on how all senators should make decisions and conduct themselves. Senator Collins was methodical, thoughtful, respectful, clearly did her homework, laid out her judicial philosophy, that of Judge Kavanaugh. She showed a grasp of the Constitution, Supreme Court precedents, and she gave a chilling and sad description of the environment that we're all living in today. It was truly a modern-day profile in courage. Frankly, I don't know Susan Collins, and I don't know her well at all. I don't get impressed that often, but the speech today, it frankly blew me away, and she should be proud. And frankly, it had a lot less to do with her decision, although that's very important in all of this, than the pure human decency, fairness, and process that she employed to get to her decision. Let's take a look.
Today, we have come to the conclusion of a confirmation process that has become so dysfunctional, it looks more like a caricature of a gutter-level political campaign than a solemn occasion. Judge Kavanaugh has received rave reviews for his 12-year track record as a judge, including for his judicial temperament. The American Bar Association gave him its highest possible rating. In evaluating any given claim of misconduct, we will be ill-served in the long run if we abandon the presumption of innocence and fairness. I listened carefully to Christine Blasey Ford's testimony before the Judiciary Committee. I found her testimony to be sincere, painful, and compelling. The 4 witnesses she named could not corroborate any of the events of that evening gathering where she says the assault occurred. None of the individuals Professor Ford says were at the party has any recollection at all of that night. The facts presented do not mean that Professor Ford was not sexually assaulted that night or at some other time, but they do lead me to conclude that the allegations failed to meet the more likely than not standard. Therefore, I do not believe that these charges can fairly prevent Judge Kavanaugh from serving on the court. Mr. President, I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
I have not always agreed with Senator Collins, and even some things she said in her speech I disagree with in terms of precedents and the law. That's not the issue. She bravely restored common sense, decency to the U.S. Senate today and led by example. And she had to stand up to a very angry left-wing mob. And she stood for principles that make this country great, showed real courage. Now, she took this process from the very beginning seriously. She protected the sanctity of the U.S. Constitution, due process, presumption of innocence. And in doing so, she exposed what is the hyper-partisan, frankly destructive nature of so many smear merchants that exist on the left today. And by the way, there are some on the right too. Senator Lindsey Graham, who's going to be joining us in a few minutes with Senator Ted Cruz, he also tonight deserves a lot of credit. His powerful moment, it lit a fire for truth, justice, and decency in this country. Many Democrats proclaimed their opposition to Judge Kavanaugh within seconds of his nomination. Others upended his hearings with endless interruptions, grandstanding, the worst of the worst. And then worst of all, many Senate Democrats actually went along with accusing Brett Kavanaugh of even being a rapist, a gang rapist, no presumption of innocence at all, drugging girls routinely at parties. They called him evil, compared him to Bill Cosby. Men were told to sit down and shut up. They did this with zero corroborating evidence and based on 36-year-old claims that were backed up by nobody. The Republicans took this rightly serious. It's a serious topic. Lawmakers, some of them, they didn't care. They wanted to ruin a man's life and his reputation forever. And I'm pretty certain tonight, Brett Kavanaugh, his wife, his two young daughters, I'm sure they'll never be the same again. We as a country cannot reward this madness, meanness, insanity. Now, many on the left are lashing out at Senator Collins, predictably. An opinion website owned by Univision called Splinter published a piece entitled Bleep Susan Collins. It's all over the place. If you look, don't even read social media. You know, nutjob, so-called comedian Kathy Griffin, you know, the one that had the severed head of Donald Trump, telling Collins to go to hell tonight. And the official Twitter of the Women's March published this picture, calls Senator Susan Collins a, quote, rape apologist. This is so over the top, so despicably ugly and disgusting. Wouldn't many of these same people that claim to have a monopoly of compassion for women, minorities, human civil rights, wouldn't they be showing outrage if any conservative in this country ever said and did such things? It's a very dangerous time for this country. Weeks prior to her speech, Susan Collins had left-wing activists sending thousands of coat hangers to her office. They made threatening, derogatory calls to her staff. They tried to bribe her with a crowdfunding campaign. And an angry mob of left-wing protesters harassing senators all over Capitol Hill. This is now getting dangerous. Take a look.
Very much concerned basically with the such things that people have to endure, and very much concerned that we have to do something as a country.
Don't put a liar on the court. Don't put a liar on the court. Don't put a liar on the court.
The system is corrupt, and that's why we disrupt. The system is corrupt, and that's why we disrupt. The system is corrupt, and that's why we disrupt. Leave women! Leave women! Leave survivors! Leave women! Leave women! Leave survivors! Leave survivors! Leave women!
Now, let me say something. And I really believe the people should be close to their elected representatives. And it's sad what I'm about to say. Before somebody gets hurt or worse, these office areas of elected officials now need to be closed to the public. Sad, but it needs to happen. This is now dangerous and out of control. And of course, the left predictably acting out in ways on TV that are frankly unconscionable. In many cases on so-called news networks. Take a look.
When, not if, when Judge Kavanaugh helps them to chip away at civil rights, voting rights, women's rights, abortion rights. I don't think this is going to sit very well with the country.
Let's not forget these people would go to church and then go to the lynching after clothing themselves in morality. And that's what we're seeing today.
Clearly, the Republicans don't care about the truth. They didn't want an investigation into who Brett Kavanaugh really was. And that's what was gutless. But unfortunately, we are where we are. And this is a travesty for America right now. The problem with America right now is that we've lost a moral compass.
Now, for the last 22 days, we Americans, we have witnessed what is an unrivaled insanity, a madness that has taken over, and it is now shaking the very core principles that every one of us, doesn't matter about politics, should be holding near and dear to our hearts. Rule of law, due process, presumption of innocence. And Democrats, well, are we going to reward this behavior? Shouldn't people be facing consequences for what is reckless actions? Senator Feinstein, she may now be the subject of an ethics probe over who leaked Professor Ford's letter. Now a witness tampering investigation should take place after claims that one of Professor Ford's close friends, who she listed to corroborate her story, admitted to the FBI that she was being pressured into altering her statement. All of this aside, in 32 days, there is now, we've all learned something. There is something a lot more profound on the ballot than anybody is talking about or telling you. On the one side, we now have one party in America, and by the way, I want to purposely exclude Joe Manchin of West Virginia, that have become a party that has been overtaken by the far left. They don't even have room for Joe Lieberman in this party. Remember what they did to him in Connecticut? I've known Joe Lieberman for decades, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. We have now witnessed in 22 days a party that clearly stands for a type of government that is alien to everything that this country we love was founded on. A party rejecting and simply just hating what we all thought we agreed on. Core, basic, fundamental principles. Rejecting even our Constitution. Demanding full and complete conformity. If you don't agree, God help you. A party of blatant double standards that can remain totally silent about gross allegations against Keith Ellison and Bill Clinton. They can love the Clintons, but pretend to care about being the champions of women's rights. Obviously, selective moral outrage. It's a party that envisions their ideology and agenda spread through the courts. They want activist judges. They want legislation that they could never get past themselves, done from the court. They don't want separation of powers, co-equal branches. This is what has made this confirmation process so political. It shouldn't matter tonight. There is zero gloating here, or I wanted Brett Kavanaugh to win because I thought he deserved the position, and I thought I'd agree with his judicial philosophy. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, liberal, or conservative. What we have been watching the last 22 days in this country, this is not justice. And in 32 days from now, human rights will be on the ballot. Treating every American with fundamental fairness, respect, equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws, that is on the ballot in 32 days. You think of the sacrifice of our founders, our framers. In 32 days, after what we have now lived through, this will be about affirming American history and values that they all fought, bled, died for, sacrificed for us. Due process, presumption of innocence. Why is that ever political? Constitutional rights, civil liberties. In 32 days, we, the people, have a choice to reaffirm these values, these principles that so many brave men and women fought, many died for. Those who understood the values of freedom and justice. It made this country great, and it has served us well. In 32 days, this election is about preserving all that is good and right and just in this country and taking a stand for future generations, for our children, our grandchildren, because what we have witnessed unfold these last 22 days is absolutely the single most despicable display of guilt by accusation we have ever witnessed. In 32 days, this is also about your life. Right now, you ask yourselves, are you better off than you were 2 years ago? Because by every reportable, objective, discerning measure, this country is now in the middle of a recovery and boom that is the envy of the world. We learned today unemployment in America, the rate dropped to the lowest point in nearly 50 years, 1969. The Mets won the World Series. It's now 3.7%. We learned that Hispanic unemployment matched a record low. Add to that historic low unemployment for African Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, and youth unemployment. Record low unemployment now in 14 states. Look at manufacturing. Manufacturing is now near an all-time high. 400,000 new manufacturing jobs, jobs that the last administration said were never coming back. Consumer confidence at an all-time high. 4 million of our fellow citizens, the forgotten men and women we talked about so much of in 2016, 4 million fewer on food stamps, 4 million new jobs created. That's 8 million Americans we have out of poverty. The promises of the president that he lists and he keeps, his tax cut, the largest in history. Border wall construction, $3 billion already spent. He's keeping that promise. The promise on NAFTA that we'd get better trade deals, pulling out of Obama's catastrophic Iranian deal. Look at the progress we've made in the Korean Peninsula. I don't see missiles flying over Japan every other day. And by the way, he's opened up what will be the might and prosperity for all of America that could literally help bring about more peace than we ever imagined. And that is, of course, the engine of every economy. We have more energy, natural gas, oil, and coal than all these other countries combined. And for all you Never Trump Republicans tonight, I have a message for you. You had your way, none of this would have happened. And by the way, I'm talking about you so-called conservative Republicans who said, I'll never vote for Trump. Well, you can't take your victory lap tonight. You know who you are. You're the ones out there podcasting, writing books that no one buys, self-promoting yourself as pro-Trump, Johnny-come-latelys. Frankly, you owe real conservatives in this country an apology. Why? Because if you had your way, none of this would be happening. But tonight, as the horrific Kavanaugh confirmation process demonstrated, this election is about so much more than just undoing these incredible 2 years. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll shout it from a mountaintop if I have to. The single most important midterm election in our lifetime. Joining us now, a man who deserves a lot of credit for this moment, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Senator, I'm happy.
Thank you.
I'm happy about the success this country had. I don't know. You actually told me when I saw you in Washington, I said, what's Susan Collins like? I asked you the question. And you said she is somebody that will look at every fact. Nobody will sway her, and she will decide. I think that was the most powerful speech I've ever seen on the Senate floor.
Well, it's historic. I mean, it changed the trajectory of where we're headed in the Senate in terms of confirming judges. She adopted the rule of law, rejected the rule of the mob. And if I had to tell somebody a good reason to vote for Judge Kavanaugh, I would ask them to look at Susan's speech. It was just incredible in detail, forcefully delivered. She didn't look like she was pained. She hated what happened to the process, but she was confident that Judge Kavanaugh was the right guy at the right time. So I think she saved the Senate and the judiciary from sliding into the abyss.
You know, Senator, I would argue I don't think we would be here without your courage. Well, no, I've known you a long time. And we've had our disagreements publicly and privately.
And I'm sure we will again.
Thanks a lot, Senator. You know, I can't wait for our next battle.
Me too. I'm getting tired of this love fest crap.
But
okay, keep going.
But I think there's a lot more on the ballot in 32 days, as I've been described. Am I wrong?
Yes.
I'm worried about what I've been witnessing.
Okay, there's two choices. The Susan Collins way, or the protester way? Who do you want to run the government? Conservatives aligned with Senator Collins, trying to work toward empowering people, make us save, more money in your pocket? Or do you want to turn your government over to people who just yell and spit on you? To me, this is a really important time in American history. It's now all about Kavanaugh. Before it was about a lot of things. Now it's pretty simple. If you vote for the Democratic Party, you're turning your government over to people who follow you around, spit on you, and try to intimidate you. If you keep the Republican Party in place, that means there'll be an alliance between Susan Collins and others to keep us safe and make our life better. That's a pretty simple choice.
You know, Senator, I really believe this after what we've witnessed now, and this has been building.
Right.
You guys, you have to clear the halls of where your office is.
Yes, sir. I'm worried about my staff.
I honestly fear somebody's going to get hurt here.
Yeah, me too. I've never, we've been, the one thing I like about Senator Collins, if you think you can change her mind by yelling at her and showing up at her house, you're dead wrong. Again, I just want to compliment her for stopping what I thought was the closest thing to McCarthyism in my lifetime, that a man is guilty until proven innocent, facts don't matter. Smearing him equates to him being disqualified. She stood pretty tall. The best thing that can happen to a good man is for a strong woman to come to his aid. And that's exactly, Susan came to the aid of an independent judiciary tonight.
Now, is it true that Senator Daines is going to be able to make it and walk his daughter down the aisle? Y'all work that out?
I think they've worked it out. I want him to be able to do both, but, we're human beings, I guess is the point here. We're not perfect. Judge Kavanaugh's a human being, and it's all going to turn out well. God bless Susan Collins and Jeff Flake.
Honestly, those that stood up for due process, those that stood up for the presumption of innocence, I thought it would be something we all agree, and apparently this is how bad it's gotten. Senator, you served your country very well in this process.
Sir.
Thank you for all you did.
See you in November. Thank you.
All right. A lot much more to get to. When we come back, Senator Ted Cruz will join us as this Breaking News Night continues. We're glad you are with us.
Turbulent, bitter fight surrounding his nomination, my fervent hope is that Brett Kavanaugh will work to lessen the divisions in the Supreme Court so that we have far fewer 5-4 decisions, and so that public confidence in our judiciary and our highest court is restored.
More Senator Susan Collins criticizing the partisanship throughout the Kavanaugh confirmation hearing. Her hope that Justice Kavanaugh will help restore confidence in our system. Here with more reaction to today's major breaking news, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Senator, I know in 32 days you're on the ballot. You're going up against, what's his name, Beto O'Rourke, who's apparently become I keep reading, a cult figure. In spite of some pretty awful things he's written about women, and apparently, according to a police report, he got a DUI and lied about leaving the scene of an accident, according to the report. But how would he vote in the Senate? Would he vote for Senator Schumer? Would he have voted against Judge Kavanaugh?
Beto O'Rourke is a hard no on Brett Kavanaugh. He was a hard no before these allegations. He's a hard no afterwards. He's running a hard left campaign like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And I think this Kavanaugh fight really underscores what the stakes are in U.S. Senate races across the country. Today was a very good day. Tomorrow, Judge Brett Kavanaugh is going to become Justice Brett Kavanaugh. But we won by the slimmest of margins, and it's why this election matters. It's why it matters that we come out and stand up, because the smear campaign we have seen, particularly in the last 2 weeks, has been a new and disgraceful low for the United States Senate, and it's not acceptable to just go after and slander Judge Kavanaugh, slander his family, treat his kids to this kind of horrific abuse. It's not right.
You know, Senator, I live in New York, rough and tumble of New York, probably a little more streetwise than I should be in life. But I'd rather live in Texas because you pay no state income taxes, and New York State will.
And we'd love to have you in Texas, Sean.
Well, I just want to ask this. Look, you've been in rough and tumble races.
Yeah.
You and the president have disagreements, but you have supported the agenda of the biggest tax cut, securing our borders, conservative originalists on the Supreme Court. You are known for your knowledge of the Constitution. What do you make of the dangers if this behavior were to be rewarded?
Well, what we've seen in the last 2 years is the extreme left is just filled with rage, they're filled with anger, they're filled with hatred for President Trump. And it's spilling out in nasty and angry protests during the Kavanaugh hearings. The first day of the hearings, 70 people were arrested with the active complicity of Democratic senators. Just yesterday, 300 people were arrested at the Capitol. And we're seeing this anger, this bitterness. You know, this week we had someone send white powder to our campaign office in Texas that ended up having hazmat and the FBI called in because the concern was that it was anthrax or something. It turned out to be negative, but we're in this environment where there's an anger, a rage, a fury, and it's wrong. It is wrong to just smear someone's character like they've done to Judge Kavanaugh. And for that matter, it's wrong to do what the Democrats did to out Dr. Ford. She asked that her allegations be kept confidential, and the congressional Democrats apparently didn't care, and they outed her against her will. That is wrong, and we've got to find a way to disagree with each other, but still engage with civility, treat each other with decency like human beings.
You know, look, you were in a very tough primary with President Trump. It's not beanbag. You gave, you took. And you said in a debate recently that at the end of the day, you were asked, well, why did you make the decision to go along with the president? And you said, because I'm here to represent the people of Texas. It seems like that campaign, and I know the president's a disruptor. I know that he breaks a lot of dishes, but we see the results now, don't we? And you put the people of your state ahead. Nothing ever has been this bad. I've never seen things this awful.
Now, the anger, the fury, the frankly threats of violence are really disturbing.
Due process.
Senators who people are showing up at their house, who are threatening their family. I mean, it's not good for this country. And you know, you look at this hearing, I mean, the basic principles of due process, as you said, the basic principles of the presumption of innocence, that you're innocent until proven guilty. You know, listen, once these allegations were made, they were serious. They needed to be treated with respect. We needed to have a full and fair hearing, and we did. We needed to give Dr. Ford an opportunity to tell her story and treat her with respect, and we did. But we also needed to give
Senator.
Judge Kavanaugh an opportunity to defend himself, and he should have been treated with respect, and he wasn't. The Democrats couldn't. Instead, they did theatrics and mock outrage. They were shocked that actually teenagers drink in high school and college. Goodness gracious. And they were even more shocked that 17-year-olds say stupid things in their yearbooks. I mean, it was a ridiculous circus. And they were willing to smear a good man and his family simply for political ends. That's not America.
Corroboration.
That's exactly
Senator,
right.
There was no corroboration.
Yes.
And let me ask you this. I watched you, and I know your wife, Heidi, I watched you get run out of a restaurant. We've seen it happen to Secretary Nielsen, Pam Bondi, it's happened to Sarah Sanders, Mitch McConnell. It's happening like on a daily basis. I don't think you should leave the halls of the Senate open. And I'm saying that for the safety, the protection of people we elect. I fear for everyone's safety at this moment.
There are a lot of senators who are having that conversation. You know, Monday night, Heidi was up in D.C., and the two of us went out about 9 o'clock at night to do a date night, just the two of us. We don't get to do that very often. We showed up at a restaurant that we love. It's a delightful restaurant. Unfortunately, somehow the protesters were there waiting for us as we walked in. They surrounded us. They screamed at us. They basically shut down the restaurant, and they made it impossible to have dinner. And so Heidi and I got up to leave. They blocked her from getting out. When we left the restaurant, you know, this actually has not been reported, but we left the restaurant, we went out the door and around a back alley, and this mob of about 15 screaming leftist protesters chased Heidi and me down the alley, screaming and yelling at us. A waiter from the restaurant let us in the back door to the kitchen, and we took shelter in the kitchen with this screaming mob outside. Now, I'll tell you a happy ending to that. So about 10 minutes later, the police arrived and they removed the protesters. And I asked Heidi, I said, okay, well, what do you want to do now? Do you want to go somewhere else? What do you want to do? She said, no, I like this restaurant. Let's go have date night. So we went back through the kitchen, sat down at the same table, and we had a delightful romantic dinner, just the two of us.
Good ending to the story. Senator, you've always stood up for the Constitution, these deeply held principles of due process and presumption of innocence, and your election is important in 32 days. We wish you all the best. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sean, and everyone come to tedcruz.org. Stand with us. We're fighting for the country.
When we come back, Democrats, members of the media, that a complete meltdown after Senator Collins gave her historic speech. We're going to play you the tape, get reaction from Tammy Bruce, Herman Cain. They're next. Stay with us. Busy breaking news Friday night. They began their freak out, predictably. Take a look.
Now we know here yet another institution broken in the time of Trump, the United States Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court is heading into a crisis of legitimacy. And when, not if, when Judge Kavanaugh helps them to chip away at civil rights, voting rights, women's rights, abortion rights, I don't think this is going to sit very well with the country. He promised that he would be a hardcore partisan, and he will be. That's the one thing he didn't lie about under oath.
The message to survivors like Dr. Ford is, one, we don't want to hear from you. Two, if we have to hear from you because we're forced to, we're going to rig it so that there is no FBI investigation.
Let's not forget these people would go to church and then go to the lynching after clothing themselves in morality, and that's what we're seeing today.
Joining us now, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, chairman of the America Fighting Back PAC, her former presidential candidate himself, Herman Cain. Tammy, you've had such a powerful voice in this debate. It has been pretty amazing to watch your comments. Senator Murkowski said, and she's a no on Kavanaugh, the appearance of impropriety has become avoidable. So if you make enough accusations, and the one side can create enough fire, that's guilt. There's no presumption of innocence in that. To me, that's scary to me, that logic.
Yeah, it should be, and it's unfortunate. You're right. Susan Collins' speech today was wonderful, was surprising for me as a supporter of the president and against the swamp. It's amazing to be supporting Susan Collins and Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. But this is where recognizing the commitment to the values that make this country great is important. And I'm not saying Lisa Murkowski doesn't do that, but look, we're all individuals. We've all had a very different life experience. But it is a warning to every single American that these kinds of arguments will resonate with people for various reasons. And we've got to stay vigilant. We have dodged something here that is very important, but it's only the beginning, Sean. This is now we've got to look toward, in the aftermath, things like the American legacy media, that it really is dead in a way. There was no ability to report other news during this framework because they could only focus on Kavanaugh.
I said journalism's dead back in 2007.
If anybody doubted it, they've got their proof right now, and this is, a very important thing. And I don't. The midterms are a key, but it continues. This is a reformation of the country, and while I would rather this didn't happen to the judge and to his family, we must see this as an opportunity to continue on with the battles in front of us, and we will prevail because it's the American way.
America should have a very bad taste in its mouth tonight, and there needs to be a hangover and a moment of sobriety here so we can begin the process of what do we want as a country. Herman Cain, I remember when you were running for president, and I remember a whole series of accusations, one accusation after another started flying after you. And I remember, because I've known you for many years, you're a friend of mine, I remember saying, I don't believe them. You didn't have the money to fight back, you bailed out of the race. After that day, it all went away. It was nothing ever was said again that I've heard.
That's because I didn't have the money, as you indicated, to basically file 3 lawsuits at the same time. And here's another thing to remember about what happened to me. Every week, they drug out another accuser, and when we got to the number 3, I knew that the liberal media mob had already made up its mind. Susan Collins, I applaud what she did today on the floor of the United States Senate. She put the integrity of the Supreme Court and the integrity of the United States Senate above the liberal media mob. I applaud her for that. Mitch McConnell did the same thing. Lindsey Graham did the same thing, along with others. The liberal media mob has not won. They didn't win
I don't
today.
really know her, I know I've disagreed with her a lot. I was surprised today. I saw somebody that maybe I just didn't know the person. Maybe I just disagreed on politics. I saw something today that I think it's a watershed moment for the country.
Well, Sean, I've got a column coming out at foxnews.com suggesting that with this experience, imagine what we can do if the establishment GOP puts down its fists and works with us to keep America great. Imagine being able to work together. You had George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice calling senators to support Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
We've seen this. Look, it was enlightening and it was exciting, and isn't it time that in looking to the future that we come together and continue to work this way?
Last word, Herman Cain.
Well, the liberal media mob, if things play out tomorrow, did not win, and that is a great thing for the United States of America.
We better be, there's way too many people, though, that were willing to forego simple, basic, core, fundamental principles of fairness, decency, due process, presumption of innocence. That ought to scare every American, and I hope they pay attention to that in 32 days.
It's just the beginning.
All right, I agree, Seth. You're right. It is just the beginning. All right, when we come back, Judge Jeanine Pirro weighs in. Sarah Carter weighs in as we continue. Stay with us. More reaction to tonight's big breaking news. Fox News contributor Sarah Carter and the author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Liars, Leakers, and Lies, the host of Justice, Judge Jeanine Pirro. Sarah, let me start with you in news. We have one senator, Republican, Senator Daines. He's supposed to be walking his daughter down the aisle, but from what I understand, they have procedurally worked it out. Lisa Murkowski votes present. That allows him to go vote, assuming that everybody stays where they are, which I would assume is going to be the case.
Yeah, that is the case, Sean, and I think it's great news. We understand how important this is. Of course, he wants to walk his daughter down the aisle, but the vote is extraordinarily important and historical. And I think what we saw today was an extraordinary moment in history, one that we haven't really experienced, particularly with Senator Collins' speech. So I think people are taking this very seriously. Tomorrow is going to be another historical day. And I think the American people, for once right now, are unified behind this Kavanaugh. Not everyone, but a lot of people believe that Judge Kavanaugh should be nominated.
Judge, a lot of people, there's two stories that I like to tell about you. One that I will never be able to tell about what a courageous human being that I know you to be. The other one is that how you, as a prosecutor, you spent a career going after predators. There are evil people in this world. There are rapists. There are men that will drug women, abuse children. This was your passion for your time as a district attorney. And when you see, look at the story about, well, almost every weekend they would drug girls and line up in the halls, gang rape these girls.
And gang rape them. Mm-hmm.
And it gets repeated
Sean,
everywhere.
I'm here in Washington. It was repeated everywhere, and it doesn't matter if it's true. But I'm here in Washington, and people have breathed a sigh of relief after hearing Senator Susan Collins and her reasoned, deliberative, lucid argument and a rebuttal of everything that the Democrats, or as I call them now, demon rats, have been saying. In essence, what happened today and what will happen tomorrow is that the United States Senate will stand up to the Saul Alinsky, hating, resisting, obstructing, gangster-like individuals who want to put a stop to our democracy. And just as Susan Collins did that on November, Americans need to put a stop to this lunacy.
We came this close to rewarding no due process, no presumption of innocence, no rule of law, of which our great constitutional republic, it has served us so well. is scary to me.
Very. And I still fear
It's
for the
scary.
country, Sean. If we don't make sure that we vote, then there's going to be a problem. Sorry, Sarah.
Sarah?
It's okay, Judge Janine. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It was scary, but something else came to mind today, Sean, to me. We live in a great nation. It didn't happen, and this is the reason why people come from all over the world to be a part of this great country, because of our Constitution, because of what we stand for. And today, our government showed that with methodical thinking, I mean, what Susan Collins did today, Senator Collins, and how she